LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the April 2nd edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I picked out the weekend's 18 best, most newsworthy clips for what should be a really educational, fair use media criticism and political analysis show for you all tonight. I'll start with some real-time with Bill Maher political comedy, as usual. Still no Saturday Night Live clips. I'm still waiting for Alec Baldwin to come back and do his Donald Trump impression. I don't know when that's going to happen. But as usual, my clips come mostly from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. You can see the 3 subtopics I'm covering down in the video description. If you're watching as a recorded show, there are links down there where you can click between the topics if one topic interests you more than another. I also have a link down there to this clip list, the notes of my 18 clips and one still image here that you can look through and try to skip between the clips or maybe get better understanding what I thought of the clip if you can understand what my notes say, which you probably can't, but it should at least tell you who's speaking and what the network is and what the subject is. So the 3 topics I'm covering, like I said, are listed in the video description. They're basically the Russia story continuing, the Supreme Court vote on Trump's nominee Neil Gorsuch coming up this week, and then I'll have a couple clips at the end on immigration, both from Real Time with Bill Maher, a joke he made in his monologue, and then a serious discussion he had about sanctuary cities with immigrants' rights activist Jose Antonio Vargas, and then a clip of my own participation in a protest against the acting director of ICE and my local sheriff here this last week, and I'll talk a little more about that at the very end of the program. But like I said, I want to start with the Bill Maher clips, a couple good jokes about the Russia situation, both General Michael Flynn requesting immunity this week, and then the latest shenanigans in the House Intelligence Committee Chair Devin Nunes scandal, where he got briefed by the White House to brief the White House, and I'll get into that. That's the second joke that Bill Maher tells, but the first joke is on the Michael Flynn request for immunity, and of course Donald Trump actually tweeted in support of that, and I'll talk about those jokes after we watch them together here.
Try to tweet his way out of this Russia story, but this shit ain't going anywhere. The Cold War. Remember the Cold War? Well, it is back with one small difference. The old Cold War, the White House was on our side. I mean, there's so many strands and smoke to this Russia connection, but I guess the big headline this week is Michael Flynn. We had him on our show. I don't know why he came here, but he did. He was the national security advisor for a hot minute, and he is asking for immunity to sing. Cannot wait to hear what he has to sing. But this is the immunity. This is the guy who led the chants at the convention, lock her up. And he also said anyone asking for immunity is probably guilty. So, you know what, Mike? If you think Hillary's a bitch, try karma.
So that was kind of a funny joke, and then the Cold War thing at the beginning, that's the theme of his monologue. In fact, there's a link down in the video description to the entire monologue, available free on YouTube on the Real Time channel on YouTube. So that's 3 of the 4 clips I'm taking from HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher last Friday are coming from that video that you can watch for free yourself on YouTube. I would suggest you wait till the end of the program, and then you can go check it out if you want. What was, I thought, even more revealing was this second joke that Bill Maher told in the monologue about what Devin Nunes did, and it's because I think the setup where he's explaining what Devin Nunes did at the White House is actually more of a joke than the punchline to the joke. Not that the punchline is that bad, but I will let you watch the joke yourself, and then you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. This is the second joke I want to show over in the monologue before we get to the actual news clips over here.
This week, we found out the information that Nunes told the White House he learned at the White House. That's right. Nunes says he needed to go to the White House to tell them what he learned from them the day before. From 3 White House staffers who told Nunes, this thing I just told you, come back tomorrow and tell us. These people are such clowns. You know who the person in the whole fucking ecosphere of Trump I respect the most? Melania. The only one with this common sense to say, fuck this, I'm staying in New York. I don't want to go anywhere near this dumpster fire.
So, yeah, I thought that was pretty revealing. I mean, the Melania Trump punchline wasn't that bad, but what was really funny about that joke was the setup as to the crazy stuff that Devin Nunes has been doing with basically becoming a tool of the White House rather than an independent arm under, you know, separation of powers under the U.S. Constitution. That's what Congress is supposed to be, a check on the executive. But Devin Nunes, a Republican member of Congress, is not really being a credible check on the executive. And that's one of the things you'll see in the 2 news reports I'm going to show on this Russia topic, one from NBC and then one from Fox News. Although, of course, the Fox News report shows throws in a couple really weird, irrelevant facts to try to help out the Republicans and Trump, but both of them seem to agree that Devin Nunes is in big trouble. And this is actually a little bit of political comedy, not from Real Time with Bill Maher. You'll see here at the beginning, Chuck Todd picks out his favorite moment from Sean Spicer, or, well, best moment from the Sean Spicer press conference that epitomizes how they're responding to the whole Russia controversy. And then Meet the Press, Chuck Todd also on Meet the Press covers the same Devin Nunes scandal and the same Michael Flynn scandal, and then adds in the death of Obamacare that I kept at the end of the clip we can watch together over here.
That best characterizes the week. It came when White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer gave this answer to CBS's Major Garrett, who asked how the information about alleged surveillance was handled.
Probably told us that you're willing to look into and ask questions about the process and provide us answers.
No. Please don't put words in my mouth. I never said I would provide you answers. I said we would look into it.
Okay. However you look into it, it's clear Donald Trump's presidency, at least for now, is on an unsustainable trajectory.
Nobody ever told me that politics was going to be so much fun.
Donald Trump is a president in crisis. His governing agenda is going nowhere. His credibility shattered with many. His public approval is mired in the 30s and low 40s. And an escalating Russia crisis is threatening to undermine the president's ability to persuade even Republicans that he can bounce back.
Any comment on Michael Flynn, Mr. President?
On Friday morning, Mr. Trump intervened in the criminal investigation into ties between his campaign and Russia. Tweeting of his former national security advisor, Mike Flynn should ask for immunity in that this is a witch hunt. A top Republican was quick to contradict the president.
No, I don't think it's a witch hunt. Look, it's very mysterious to me, though, why all of a sudden General Flynn is suddenly out there saying he wants immunity.
Awkwardly, during the campaign, both Flynn and Mr. Trump repeatedly said that immunity from prosecution indicates guilt.
When you are given immunity, that means that you've probably committed a crime.
If you're not guilty of a crime, what do you need immunity for?
You know, Flynn said himself, if you want immunity, you must, be guilty.
And by Friday afternoon, the White House was trying to soften Mr. Trump's statement.
He believes that Mike Flynn should go testify.
With or without immunity?
Well, I mean, that's up to him and his lawyer to decide.
Also changing the story on whether the White House was involved in helping Republican House Intelligence Chair Devin Nunes view classified documents to attempt to prove Trump aides were incidentally swept up in surveillance. On Monday,
did you meet with the president or any of his aides while you were there that night?
No, and in fact, I'm quite sure that I think people in the West Wing had no idea that I was there.
But by Friday,
there were people that probably knew about this, knew about me being there, but the fact of the matter is that doesn't make him the source of my information.
The New York Times and Washington Post have named 3 White House officials who may have been involved.
Nunes, the House, they're off in a ditch. I don't know who invited him to look at the evidence in the White House? All I can say is, why do you show it to the chairman of the Intel Committee if you got it yourself?
And then there's the president and his fight with House conservatives. On Thursday, he lashed out at members of his own party, tweeting, "The Freedom Caucus will hurt the entire Republican agenda if they don't get on the team, and fast. We must fight them." Those conservatives are hitting back.
I mean, it's constructive in 5th grade.
The guy who said he was going to D.C. to drain the swamp. Now it looks like we got the creature from the Black Lagoon in the White House.
And joining me now is the Senate Majority Leader.
So you can see they include that Chuck Todd report on how the whole Russia scandal is hurting the Trump administration, and the Michael Flynn scandal, and how Devin Nunes is losing all credibility. I thought Chuck Todd and NBC did a great job there, showing how his story had changed about White House involvement from Monday to Friday. And I mean, that is like the good example compared now to what I'm about to show is the bad example from Fox News Sunday. And it started out so well. I was actually going to say, Kevin Corke, the reporter from Fox News Sunday this week. Last week I was critical, but he actually starts off saying that Devin Nunes is having real credibility problems, and there's like problems with the story and all this. But you'll see by the end of the story, he like puffs up this claim that Devin Nunes has heard some sort of whistleblower, which later in the program I'll show Adam Schiff pretty much debunking, who's the House Intelligence Committee ranking member from the Democrats, who recently saw all the same stuff at the White House that Devin Nunes saw. And then they also say, and one thing's for sure, Kevin Corke at the end says, one thing's for sure, the General Michael Flynn's rights were violated. They're talking about him being unmasked, where, I mean, it's likely, but not necessarily. I mean, we don't know whether it was as the result of some actual investigation and unmasked for some. I mean, there are reasons that it could be unmasked. So that you'll see this Kevin Corke report from Fox News Sunday starts off well, goes horribly wrong by the end, as we'll watch together here. Time will tell. We'll see how that all turns out. That's like a cliche layered on a cliche, though. I guess he was doing that all live there, and it's tough to do live broadcasts. I know that even from my amateur broadcasts. But that whole thing about, Michael Flynn's rights being violated, that's one thing we know for sure. As I said before I showed the clip, that was kind of ridiculous. And then that whole, what was that, triple hearsay? Paul Ryan says that Devin Nunes says that someone in the White House is saying that there's a whistleblower. It's like a triple hearsay? You tell me. That seems a little bit uncalled for Trump propaganda in the last 20 seconds of that report there. That I mean, I guess that's where Fox News is these days, even though the Republican Party's really split. You saw from the NBC report that the Freedom Caucus people are starting to attack Donald Trump after being attacked by Donald Trump. And then this next clip I want to show is from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, the permanent co-host or guest, I don't know what she's called, but Martha Raddatz was interviewing Senator John McCain, and he didn't take the bait on the first question about whether Putin was still trying to help Trump. He said, he doesn't think that's happening, but he is definitely willing to say Devin Nunes has lost credibility, and now it's up to the Senate bipartisan investigation. That's, the Senate is really proud of itself that they have the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee and the ranking Democrat are actually getting along, and I'll talk about that a little more after I show this clip from Senator John McCain, kind of making that point, but not in any way backing up Devin Nunes over here.
I've made no secret that Vladimir Putin preferred Donald Trump to Hillary Clinton. You've heard the kinds of things that President Trump says and tweets about the Russians and Putin, some very positive remarks. Do you think there is a possibility that the Russians are still trying to help? President Trump?
No, I would be astounded. And by the way, I think the national security team that the president has assembled is outstanding, and I hope that he listens to them, because they don't have any illusions about Vladimir Putin and Russian behavior. So, but this is why we need a select committee, Martha. Every time we turn around, another shoe drops from this centipede. And we need to examine all of the aspects of it, President Trump's priorities and the other priorities that many of us believe exist.
Sean Spicer said what Congressman Nunes did from the Intelligence Committee when he received the secret information at the White House was both routine and proper. What he did, what he saw, and who he met with is 100% proper. Do you think that's true?
It's hard to respond, but the fact is that these committees, especially intelligence committees and armed services committees, we work closely together as Republicans and Democrats. We have to. It's for the good of the security of the nation and the men and women who serve us. I'm happy to see the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Warner and Senator Burr, working closely together. This is obviously a schism between Republican and Democrat, let alone the bizarre fashion with which all of this happened. If we're really going to get to the bottom of these things, it's got to be done in a bipartisan fashion. And as far as I could tell, Congressman Nunes killed that.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us.
So you can see there, Senator John McCain is not sticking up for the House Intelligence Chair, Devin Nunes. He also, I thought that was kind of an interesting phrase, another shoe is going to drop from this centipede. The first time he used it, now it's getting a little bit old, but it's still kind of an interesting image if it's the first time you've heard it of Trump's Russia scandal, that shoes keep dropping off this centipede, and that's going to continue to happen for the foreseeable future. So that's why I picked that clip. And then also I promised that I would show the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, talk about going to the White House this last week and seeing the exact same information that Devin Nunes saw. And one of the things that's really interesting is, how does he know it's the exact same information? Well, that's actually part of the conspiracy, as he explains, answering questions about that, talking to Jake Tapper over on CNN State of the Union. And I'll talk about that a little more after. This is, I think, the last Devin Nunes clip, and then I'm going to move over to the Michael Flynn part of the scandal. But this is Adam Schiff, like I said, drawing an interesting conclusion from what material he saw at the White House over here.
The White House to view these documents that Chairman Nunes, your Republican counterpart, has discussed, and Nunes says that they suggest the raising of issues that he has about incidental surveillance of Trump advisors, maybe even the president himself. The president has said he feels somewhat vindicated by what Nunes has said about these documents, although Nunes has said they do not show what the president claimed, a wiretap of Trump at Trump Tower. But now that you've seen these documents, can you understand why Chairman Nunes might have some issues with the surveillance that was going on?
Well, I can't go into the contents of the documents, Jake. I can't say I don't agree with the chairman's characterization, which is exactly why it's so important you don't share documents with just one person or even two people. They need to be shared with both the full committees. But the most important thing people need to know about these documents is not classified. And it's a couple things. First, the deputy assistant to the White House informed me when I went to see them that these are exactly the same materials that were shown to the chairman. Now, this is a very interesting point. How does the White House know that these are the same materials that were shown to the chairman if the White House wasn't aware what the chairman was being shown? And the second point was also made to me, and this is, I think, was also underscored by Sean Spicer, and that is, it was told to me by the deputy assistant that these materials were produced in the ordinary course of business. Well, the question for the White House and for Mr. Spicer is the ordinary course of whose business? Because if these were produced either for or by the White House, then why all the subterfuge? There's nothing ordinary about the process that was used here at all. And Jake, I think the answer may come from the president himself. And you can say a lot of things about the president, but one thing you cannot say is he's not subtle. And I think his tweets tell the story, and the story is, look over there. at leaks and look over there at anything the Obama administration we can claim did wrong on incidental collection or anything else. But whatever you do, under no circumstances, look here at me or at Russia. I think that's really what's going on.
Do you think that Chairman Nunes was part of an attempt to provide some sort of cover for the president's claim about Obama wiretapping him at Trump Tower, which obviously this does not prove, but to cover for that, or an attempt to distract, as you're suggesting?
It certainly is an attempt to distract and to hide the origin of the materials, to hide the White House hand. The question is, of course, why? And I think the answer to the question is this effort to point the Congress in other directions. Basically say, don't look at me, don't look at Russia, there's nothing to see here. You know, I would tell people whenever they see the president use the word fake, it ought to set off alarm bells. And I think that's really what's gone on here.
Now, you signed a...
Whenever you hear the president use the word fake, it should set off alarm. I don't know. Whenever you see the president's lips moving, that should set off alarm bells, I think. But what I found really interesting about that, that's the first time I've heard Adam Schiff talk about what he saw, and that he saw the exact same documents that Devin Nunes saw before he started this whole supposed support for the Trump tweet about Obama wiretapping Trump Tower. And you hear, at least from Devin Nunes' interpretation, that there's not really anything there, and the fact that they are telling him that he's seeing the same stuff and that it's created in the ordinary course of business are both things that actually support the whole conspiracy theory and Devin Nunes being a tool of the White House. And you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. And like I said, I want to move on from the Devin Nunes part of the Russia scandal over to the Michael Flynn part of the Russia scandal. And this has to do with Michael Flynn actually asking for immunity through his lawyer. And I'm going to show another clip of Adam Schiff talking to Jake Tapper about what happened. And this is actually from earlier in the interview. It's actually the first question in the interview, because I wanted to capture this big dig from Jake Tapper against Michael Flynn. Or he talks about why it is. This is actually another piece of political humor. Why it is that Michael Flynn did not disclose all of the payments he got from Russia. His lawyer gave an explanation for that, because that came out yesterday, that he got all these additional payments from Russia Today and other Russian sources. And the reason he didn't, well, it's at the beginning of this clip, and then Adam Schiff also talks about whether he should get immunity, which I will talk about with you after we watch that clip together. This is clip number 7.
It's also reveal new information about fired National Security Advisor, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who this week asked Congress for immunity in exchange for any testimony about Russian meddling in the U.S. election. Flynn failed to report thousands of dollars in speaking fees he had received from the Russian government-owned propaganda channel RT for this appearance alongside Russian President Vladimir Putin, as well as for paid speeches by a Russian airline and a Russian cybersecurity company. Flynn's lawyer claims he was fired before he could complete his initial financial disclosure forms. I'm joined now by one of the congressmen leading the probe into Russia's activities in the U.S. election, Representative Adam Schiff, who serves as the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman Schiff, thanks so much for joining us.
It's good to be with you, Jake.
So let me ask you about General Flynn. He says, his lawyer says at least, that he's willing to testify before your committee if he's given immunity. President Trump seemed to voice support for this, tweeting, quote, Mike Flynn should ask for immunity in that this is a witch hunt excuse for big election loss by media and Dems of historic proportion. Flynn's lawyer says that General Flynn has a story to tell Congressman. What would it take for the committee to give him immunity?
Well, I think we start out with a very healthy skepticism. We know from the filings that were dumped by the White House on Friday that General Flynn failed to report the money that he received from that RT propaganda arm of the Kremlin, as well as 2 other Russian entities. We also have requested the background security documents that General Flynn filled out to find out whether he similarly failed to disclose work that he was doing as a financial agent of a foreign power or receiving financial support from a foreign power. And of course, there's the issue of whether General Flynn made false statements that would also expose him to liability. So there's a lot we need to learn before entertaining anything like this. There's a lot we need to learn from other witnesses, but I start out, I think, with a very healthy skepticism.
A skepticism that he has anything worth sharing? Well, what is the skepticism about?
Well, the skepticism is, we'll need to consult with the Justice Department. They obviously have a lot of equities here. We don't want to do anything that will interfere in any case that the Justice Department may decide to bring. We also have to determine whether he really can add value to our investigation, whether we need him to learn information we can't learn from other sources. So it's very early, I think, even to be considering this. There's a lot more work that we need to do, and I think we're properly bringing a degree of skepticism along with us.
What did you think about President Trump tweeting about the immunity deal? Some of the president's critics suggested that maybe he was signaling to the Justice Department or the FBI that they should offer General Flynn such a deal.
The president's pretty transparent in his tweets. I think he wanted to get across a message that he's not afraid of what General Flynn has to say, and basically daring the Congress to give him immunity. And then if we make a judgment that, no, we shouldn't be giving him immunity, the president can say we don't want his story to come out. So I think it was a strategic move by the president and a pretty transparent one.
On Friday, you traveled to the White House to view
Oh, so sorry about that delay. I just got my first couple super chats, and I was like trying to figure that out. And I appreciate that. That's extra value, especially with all the demonetization going on YouTube. One thing I wanted to say about that clip, what I thought was really funny at the beginning was the reason that Michael Flynn's lawyer gave that that he didn't disclose his ties with Russia is because or these payments from Russia is because he was fired too quickly for not disclosing some of his contacts with Russia. So, I don't know. I don't know. As a lawyer, I don't know. Why would a lawyer say something like that? That doesn't seem to be something that would help your client. I did want to show, I'm not going to promise that I'm always going to show these super chat messages. Usually I don't know exactly how I feel about people paying, but I did get two of them here. One from looks like sort of someone who's a Trump supporter from the UK, I guess, because it's in pounds, and then a supporter just at my channel here. I appreciate those first two super chat donations. I guess I'll see how that. I don't know exactly what that looks like to those of you who are watching the show, but as I've said, when I first added Super Chat, when they got rid of fan funding, I can't promise to show every Super Chat comment. I usually choose comments based on how they increase my argument that I'm doing a fair use media criticism and political analysis show, because the live comments during the clips actually increase the fair use argument, or make it stronger, because we're all commenting on the clips and it's live, so it's not something that happens after I've already taken the clip. It's while I'm actually broadcasting the clip. So I appreciate all the comments, and that's what I usually try to show are the comments that are making the best media criticism and political commentary on the clips that I'm showing. But I appreciate those of you who donate through the super chat as well. Anyway, I want to get on to the next clip before I got all distracted by that. This is actually someone you do not want. Kind of like that lawyer who said, we couldn't disclose all the payments because we got fired too quickly. My client got fired too quickly for not disclosing contacts with Russia. That's why he couldn't disclose his payments from Russia. That you don't want someone defending you like that. Well, this is the Russian press secretary who is defending also Michael Flynn and Donald Trump, and I don't know. There's some real holes in the arguments he makes. His name is Dmitry Peskov, I believe, and he was over on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. This is actually an interview from Friday that George Stephanopoulos, I think it ended up on Good Morning America, but they had some of it on This Week with George Stephanopoulos as well, which I will discuss with you after we watch that clip together. Over here.
Flynn, President Trump's former national security advisor, is now seeking immunity to talk to the FBI and also the investigating committees in the Congress. His lawyer says he has a story to tell. Are you concerned about anything he might say about his contacts with Russia?
No, we're not. We insist that any blamings that Russia could have been interfering in domestic affairs of the United States is slander. And it has no evidence at all.
Well, General Flynn did have documented contacts with Russian officials, including the ambassador Kislyak, and it's now been reported that they discussed U.S. sanctions against Russia. You initially denied that. Do you now accept that they did, in fact, discuss sanctions?
Well, listen, and our ambassador in Washington is performing his job from 100%. And he's a brilliant diplomat, but he's not a spy. And this is a perverted perception of ambassador's job to say that every contact with a Russian ambassador is potentially dangerous and potentially can be put in a line of activities interfering in domestic affairs.
It was rather unusual for President Putin not to retaliate after those sanctions were imposed by President Obama, because he following the conclusions that Russia did interfere in our elections. Did that failure to retaliate have anything to do with the message that General Flynn gave to Ambassador Kislyak?
Listen, sanctions or issue of lifting sanctions or imposing sanctions, any promises could not be an issue of those contacts, because none of them, neither Ambassador Kislyak nor General Flynn, could have been involved in decision making.
You've said that President Putin.
So there are a couple big holes in that argument, I thought, from Dmitry Peskov there. First, you notice when George Stephanopoulos asked him, did Michael Flynn and Kislyak, or the Russian ambassador, did they discuss ending sanctions? He totally dodged the question at first and said, well, people don't understand what ambassadors do. They're always talking to people, and he's, does a great job, and why do they always think it has to do with spying? And so he didn't answer the question, and then at the end he made this whole argument, well, and they couldn't really have been talking about undoing the sanctions because they're not the decision makers. Well, that doesn't mean they couldn't be messengers to the decision makers. So, I don't know. That did not convince me. I know that there are some people, there are some pro-Russian people, pro-Trump, pro-Russian people in my audience. You can let me know what you think. Whether that persuaded you. Before I finish the Russian topic, I want to show 3 different levels of defense from Republicans for Trump and the whole Russia scandal. First, from Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, and his defense is more of the Senate Intelligence Committee and the FBI, not so much Donald Trump. He basically says there's no evidence of collusion between Trump and the Russians, but there's also no evidence that Obama wiretapped Trump Tower, so he's not taking a side on that. Then I'll get to Nikki Haley, the Trump administration's ambassador to the United Nations, and then the Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross at the end, which with this really funny clip. But first, let's do Mitch McConnell. Some people have compared him, I think it was Jon Stewart who compared him to Cecil the Turtle in this old, I think it was Warner Brothers cartoon. I can't remember which cartoon it was. I think it was, Warner Brothers, but, maybe if you want me to do the turtle impression at the end of the Mitch McConnell clip, you can, I think I may save it for the Supreme Court section, which is coming up in just a minute, where I have a couple Mitch McConnell clips, but let me know what you think down in the comment section. We'll watch Mitch McConnell basically talking about no evidence either way, and he has trust in the FBI and the Senate Intelligence Committee bipartisan investigation, over talking to Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday this morning here.
Let's start with Russia. You were last month briefed by FBI Director Comey as part of the so-called Gang of 8 congressional leaders. Have you seen any evidence of collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign, or any evidence that the Obama administration did anything improper? in surveilling the Trump team?
Well, Chris, as you know, I asked the Senate Intelligence Committee to investigate all of these allegations. Senator Burr and Senator Warner are going forward on a very constructive bipartisan basis. The only thing I asked them to do is to find out what happened. And once they found out what happened, hopefully they'll be able to issue a unanimous report, and we'll all know what, if anything, went on based on these allegations.
Do you worry, and obviously we don't know what went on, do you worry, though, that this continuing controversy is interfering with the president's ability to push his agenda?
Well, it's certainly not helpful. The president's actual agenda has been really quite constructive. All the effort to begin the deregulatory effort we need to get the economy moving again, a fabulous Supreme Court nominee that I know we'll be discussing later, moving it forward on tax reform. This is just what the country needs to get the kind of growth rate that would produce jobs and opportunity for the next generation.
I want to ask you one last question about Russia, too, before we get to the Supreme Court justice. Given all of the politics on all sides, the continuing controversy, why not appoint an independent 9/11-style commission or have the Justice Department appoint a special counsel so you have a truly nonpartisan, independent investigation that everybody can trust?
It's just not necessary based on what we know now. We've got a bipartisan investigation underway. It's called the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator Burr and Senator Warner had a joint press conference this week. I think they clearly laid out that they're going wherever the facts take them. We don't need yet another investigation. We know the FBI is looking at it from their perspective. It's being handled appropriately, and it will be handled well.
You have promised that...
Yep. We've got a bipartisan investigation underway. It's called the Senate Intelligence Committee. And the FBI is looking into it. Yep. Okay, I saw people wanted the impression. That's one of the few impressions I can sort of do. So there you go, Mitch McConnell saying that the Senate Intelligence Committee and the FBI we can trust them. They're doing real independent investigations. We don't have to worry about Devin Nunes being a tool of the White House and what's going on the House side. But some people are calling for an independent commission, kind of like 9/11, or some sort of select committee of House and Senate that doesn't have the normal day-to-day business and some of the partisan influences, but I don't know. I guess it depends on how big it gets and how much evidence comes out, and that's, as Kevin Corke said, that time will tell and it remains to be seen, or something like that. But I want to show two more quick clips. That was the Mitch McConnell clip. Now I want to show Nikki Haley. And the thing I like about this clip is the way Martha Raddatz starts it off with kind of a dig at the Trump administration's foreign policy team, especially Rex Tillerson, who has done almost no interviews. I think he did one like magazine, I can't remember, but he has not been on any of the Sunday shows. And so she introduces Nikki Haley, the UN ambassador, as the first member of the core Trump foreign policy team to actually be interviewed, to let us interview. And this is like a total dodge of the whole Russian issue. It's even, at least Mitch McConnell gave a little bit of an answer, even though it was basically, let's wait for the Intelligence Committee and the FBI to figure out what happened. But Nikki Haley is like pretending, it's almost like it's not happening, according to Nikki Haley, talking, this is to Martha Raddatz on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos over here.
With the first Sunday morning interview with a member of Donald Trump's core foreign policy team, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. Ambassador Haley, thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Martha.
I want to start with Russia. President Trump has been tweeting again this weekend, calling the Trump-Russia story fake news. Do you think it's fake news, phony, a total scam, as the president says?
Well, Martha, I can tell you that things are very busy at the United Nations, and what I'm focused on is the chatter that the international community is saying, not the chatter that is going on in D.C. And so what I can tell you is I talk with countries, whether it's the Arab states or in the Middle East, and they talk about how they're glad to see us fighting against Iran. I talk with different countries in reference to Syria, and we talk about how we can get the Iranian influence out. We're talking about North Korea and what we need to do and the pressure we need to put on China. They're happy that we're finally beating up on Russia for what they've done in the Ukraine. So those are really the focuses that I've had and the conversations that I've had. No one's talking to me about the D.C. chatter. What they are talking is that they're very happy to see the United States lead again.
But Ambassador Haley, this has to affect the U.S. relationship with Russia. What are you seeing?
Well, I can tell you that in my dealings with Russia in particular at the United Nations, we beat up on them because we thought that what they did with Crimea and what's happening in Ukraine is wrong, and we called them out for it. And what we've said is that they are not being helpful in the way that they and Iran are covering up for Assad. We don't think that's helpful. We need their pressure when it comes to dealing with ISIS, and we also need their pressure when it comes to dealing with China and North Korea. So there's certain things that we do work with Russia on, and then there's certain things when they do something wrong, I have no problem calling them out on it.
What do you think should happen to Russia?
And at least that last part is true, that the UN ambassador, Nikki Haley, of all the people in the Trump administration, she's been the one who's had the strongest anti-Russian statements that she's made in her UN duties. And I think that may be why they sent her out there first, because she has the most credibility attacking Russia, because they've had her making these, at least in terms of her rhetoric. But you heard from her answer. Other than that, her answer was pretty much a dodge of, there's nothing to see here, let's not. And there were actually a couple, in addition to the UN ambassador, they sent a couple cabinet secretaries out. I didn't take any clips from Scott Pruitt, who was, of course, went on Fox News for his first interview, because I didn't do a climate change section or topic, but that's definitely worth watching if, and I don't want to pretend like the corporate media didn't cover climate change at all, and it was even covered on Fox News Sunday, but I have no clips from that. But I did take this one clip from the Commerce Secretary, and it's on this whole Russia thing, because Donald Trump held this photo op where he was supposed to sign these executive orders involving the Commerce Secretary, and he got asked a question about Michael Flynn and whether his tweet in support of Michael Flynn seeking immunity meant that he was asking the Justice Department to grant him immunity, which would be totally improper. And you'll see Trump walks out of the photo op without signing the executive orders, and Jake Tapper asks him if that means that there's no one who can tell Trump he's doing anything wrong because he's done something wrong by walking out without signing the orders, which it seems to me is not really the right question. Although, I don't know, is Trump storming out to avoid answering the question or what? Watch this clip at the beginning and you tell me, what do you think is going on in Trump's head when he walks? Is he just in a fugue state, or is he storming out of this supposed photo op where he's supposed to sign the executive orders? And this is the last clip on the Russia topic over here.
White House on Friday, and you were present for it, and it was really curious. Let me just show it. The president was supposed to sign these executive orders on trade. Take a listen.
Thank you, everybody. You're going to see some very, very strong results very, very quickly. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, today with your tweet, were you trying to tell the Justice Department to grant immunity to Michael Flynn? Were you trying to do that, Mr. President? Was that your intention, Mr. President, sir?
Thank you, President.
Mr. President, was that your intention, Mr. President? Was that your intention, sir?
This is a very curious moment. You see Vice President Pence at the end there go over there and try to tell him he forgot to sign the executive orders. President Trump says, bring them into the other room, I'll sign them there. Is there anyone in the president's inner circle who's willing to tell him when he's making a mistake?
Well, as to the signing of the orders, he did sign the orders. I was there with him in the anteroom when he signed them, and in fact, he gave me the pen that he used to sign the order most directly relevant to the Department of Commerce. So I don't see where the term mistake comes from.
Well, it was supposed to be signed. He was supposed to sign them before the cameras. It was a ceremony, and he ended up walking out before he signed them, which I'm sure was just an honest mistake, or maybe he didn't want to answer Major Garrett's question about immunity and Michael Flynn, but in any case, it just all looked rather odd, and it also just raises the question, is there anybody who can tell the president when he's wrong?
Well, I don't see what he did that's wrong. It's his decision where he wants to sign an order. He did sign the order. It's official. That's the relevant fact. Whether it pleased some particular cameraman or not is of no concern.
All right, Secretary Wilbur Ross, appreciate your time this morning, sir. Thanks so much.
I don't know about that Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross. When I look at him, he looks a little bit like E.T., the extraterrestrial, or there's something like not quite human, like maybe animatronic, or I don't know. Maybe I'm just being crazy, but his answer there also was another total dodge, I think. And when you watch the clip at the beginning, did you think Donald Trump stormed out? Or it's hard to tell because he does so many things that don't really make sense, so it's hard to figure out what's going on in Donald Trump's head in that clip. But like I said, that's the last clip on the Russia topic, so I now have a few clips I want to show you on the Supreme Court nomination of Neil Gorsuch. There were several discussions of that because apparently it's going to come up for a vote in the Senate this week, and you'll see I'm going to show a couple clips from Mitch McConnell again. I don't know, maybe if I'm inspired, there'll be another Cecil the Turtle impression here, but this is so the first clip I want to show is Mitch McConnell talking about the whether he regrets the whole that Merrick Garland was the Merrick Garland nomination never even got a hearing, and you'll see I think he does not react very well to the questioning from Chuck Todd on Meet the Press here. He keeps talking about how, you know, if the shoe were on, we all recognize if the shoe were on the other foot, anyone would have done it. But then, like, when Chuck Todd asks him, you know, why didn't you at least have hearings? You know, you could have voted no. He gets this, like, little smile on his face, but he doesn't look really happy, I don't think. You can tell me what you think after we watch that first clip of Mitch McConnell talking to Chuck Todd on NBC's Meet the Press this morning here.
There is clearly a debate and a fight about how Supreme Court justices are confirmed, how it was handled. Do you have any regrets on how you treated Merrick Garland last year?
No, the tradition had been not to confirm vacancies created in the middle of a presidential year. You'd have to go back to 80 years to find the last time that happened. You go back to 1880s to find the last time it happened. Before that, everyone knew, including President Obama's former White House counsel, that if the shoe had been on the other foot, they wouldn't have filled a Republican president's vacancy in the middle of a Supreme Court, in the middle of a presidential election. So that clearly wasn't going to happen, even if the roles had been reversed.
Well, I understand that, but why not? If that was the rationale, that's a rationale to vote against his confirmation. Why not put him up for a vote?
Really?
Well, I mean, why
really?
isn't that? I mean, I'm just asking. That is a look. Any senator can have a rationale not to vote for a confirmation. Why not put Merrick Garland on the floor? And if the rationale is, you know what, too close to an election, then vote no.
Look, we litigated that last year. The American people decided they wanted Donald Trump to make the nomination, not Hillary Clinton. And what's before us now, Chuck, is not what happened last year, but the qualifications of Neil Gorsuch, unanimously well qualified by the American Bar Association. 99% of the time in the majority. 97% of his opinions were unanimous. Only one time reversed by the Supreme Court. There's no rational basis, no principled reason for voting against Neil Gorsuch, and that's what's before the Senate this week.
You say it's been litigated last year, the Merrick Garland situation. For a lot of Senate Democrats, they're not done litigating this, including someone like Tom Carper, a Democratic senator who is not comfortable with the idea of filibustering, but believes Merrick Garland was mistreated. Again, what was wrong with allowing Merrick Garland to have an up or down vote?
I already told you. You don't fill Supreme Court vacancies in the middle of a presidential election. That's what Joe Biden said back in 1992 when he was chairman of the Judiciary Committee. We knew exactly.
Should that be the policy going forward? Are you prepared to pass a resolution that says, in election years, any Supreme Court vacancy, and have it to be the sense of a Senate resolution that say no Supreme Court nominations will be considered in any even-numbered year? Is that where we're headed?
Chuck, with all due respect, that's an absurd question. We were right in the middle of a presidential election year. Everybody knew that neither side, had the shoe been on the other foot, would have filled it. But that has nothing to do with what we're voting on this year. Why don't we talk about what we're voting on this week? And that's this extraordinarily well-qualified nominee for the U.S. Supreme Court.
So, I don't know. What do you think of that kind of creepy laugh there from Mitch McConnell about halfway through that clip when Chuck Todd asked why Merrick Garland never even got a hearing? I don't know. I think that might be the Mitch McConnell, what Mitch McConnell looks like when he is not happy with the question. But that was a very, very creepy laugh. At least whatever was actually the reason for it, or what conclusion you want to draw from it, I think you have to agree that was one of the creepiest laughs I've ever heard. But I want to move on to one more clip from Mitch McConnell where he's not talking about the, who's right, who's wrong on Merrick Garland. He's actually talking about the mechanics of the filibuster and the history of the filibuster. That's basically what's going to happen this week is Neil Gorsuch is going to come up for a vote, and there's going to be a cloture vote where they have to get 60 votes to end debate and actually vote on whether Neil Gorsuch is going to be the Supreme Court, the new Supreme Court justice. And if there 40 Democrats vote against cloture, and so far it's hard to say whether they're going to have the votes or not. If there are 41 Democrats to stop cloture, then the Republicans will have to change the rules or change the nominee, which is, I'm going to show Chuck Schumer in a minute say that they should change the nominee, not change the rules. But here is Mitch McConnell on NBC's Meet the Press saying that the one thing he's sure of is that by the end of this week, Neil Gorsuch is going to be confirmed on the Supreme Court, and it's up to the Democrats as to what the method of that happening is going to be. And I will discuss that with you after we watch that clip together here.
To go on a situation where there's going to be this extra level of filibuster. And let me ask you about that. Do you have the votes to change the rules among Republicans? Do you have all 52 Republicans ready to stand behind you that if the Democrats filibuster Neil Gorsuch, you have the votes to change the rules?
Yeah, what I can tell you is that Neil Gorsuch will be confirmed this week. How that happens really depends on our Democratic friends. How many of them are willing to oppose cloture on a partisan basis to kill a Supreme Court nominee? Never happened before in history, in the whole history of the country. In fact, filibustering judges at all is a rather recent phenomenon started by your next guest, Senator Schumer, after George Bush, 43, got elected president. We didn't used to do this. Clarence Thomas was confirmed 52-48, the most controversial Supreme Court nominee in history, and not a single senator said he has to get 60 votes.
You're somebody, though, that was very concerned when this rule was changed by Harry Reid for judges below Supreme Court. If you regret what Harry Reid did, why continue down this slippery slope?
Well, I think breaking the rules of the Senate to change the rules of the Senate, which is what was done in 2013, was terrible for the Senate. But when we came to the majority a year and a half later, we discussed this about whether or not to restore the old system. And we decided not to do it because the custom, even though it was always possible to filibuster judges, the custom down to 2000 was not to do it. In other words, the Senate restrained itself and gave every Supreme Court nominee an up or down vote down to 2000. So this recent invention of this level of controversy, we decided was best left alone by just leaving us where we were.
So you now believe Harry Reid made the right decision?
No, I don't think he should have broken the rules to change the rules of the Senate, but that's the precedent. That's the precedent now that they set on what we call the executive calendar. And the Supreme Court is part of the executive calendar.
Are you comfortable that in 10 years we may not even have a filibuster anymore because somebody else may replace you and continue down this slippery slope?
I don't think the legislative filibuster is in danger. It's a long-standing tradition of the Senate. The business of filibustering judges is quite new, all really begun by the current Democratic leader, and you should ask him about that when he's on your show.
Well, That is my plan right now. Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, thank you for coming on, sir.
So that is basically the best, strongest Republican argument on the whole filibuster controversy and whether Supreme Court nominees should be filibustered. And as Chuck Todd said, he was about to have on now the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer. And if you want to hear the Democratic side of that same argument about the filibuster, here's Chuck Schumer giving, you know, like I said, I think there's a better argument coming up from independent Senator Angus King that sort of brings the two, the Merrick Garland part and the filibuster part together. But I think Chuck Schumer's argument is at least as strong as Mitch McConnell's, and I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together. This is basically Chuck Schumer taking on the two clips I showed from Mitch McConnell. All those issues, those are all taken on in this one clip. It's almost 6 minutes long from Chuck Schumer talking about whether he will filibuster the nomination and whether Democrats will filibuster the nomination of Neil Gorsuch. Over here.
This way, you expressed regret earlier this year for the rules change that was made on judges in 2013. Why did you go along with it if you regret doing it?
Well, let's look at the history. Our Republican colleagues had been holding back on just about all of so many lower court judges, including the very important D.C. Circuit. I went to Lamar Alexander, one of my dear friends in the Senate, and I said, look, if you keep holding back on scores and scores of judges, my side's going to want to change the rules. Go to Mitch and tell him, at least let us have some votes on a few of these, many of whom had gotten bipartisan support. The answer was no, and we changed the rules, but the one thing that stands out here, Chuck, is we did not change it for Supreme Court for one very important reason, and that is on the most important of decisions, 60 votes is called for. That's why you get a mainstream. That's how you get a mainstream justice. Just about every, Mitch calls it a filibuster. We call it the 60-vote standard. Most Americans believe in the 60-vote standard.
But okay, that's fine, but there is no rule that says that it has to be 60 votes. There's no part of advice and consent that says there has to be 60 votes. And in fact, there are currently 2 members of the Supreme Court right now that did not get 60 votes. Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas.
Well, actually, Clarence Thomas is the only one, because when the filibuster came up with Alito, there were 72 votes to go forward. So there's just one. Just about every nominee gets 60 votes, because in the past, presidents have actually consulted the other side before picking someone. In this case, Donald Trump consulted the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, hard right groups with extreme special interest-oriented views, and it didn't leave much chance for compromise.
You know, Heidi Heitkamp, one of the Democratic senators in your conference, she came out in favor of Neil Gorsuch and in favor of cloture. She said she's not happy about it. She didn't like the way Merrick Garland was treated. But she ended her statement by essentially saying, 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Okay, let me make
Why not give Neil Gorsuch an up or down vote, Senator Schumer?
Let me make a proposal here to maybe break this problem that we have, okay? It looks like Gorsuch will not reach the 60-vote margin. So instead of changing the rules, which is up to Mitch McConnell and the Republican majority, why doesn't President Trump, Democrats and Republicans in the Senate sit down and try to come up with a mainstream nominee? Look, when a nominee doesn't get 60 votes, you shouldn't change the rules. You should change the nominee. And let's just give me 1 minute here, because this is important.
All right.
Let's just look at the history, okay? Our nominee was Merrick Garland. Mitch McConnell broke 230 years of precedent and didn't call him up for a vote. It wasn't in the middle of an election campaign. It was March. Second, then now it looks like we have the 60 the votes to prevent Gorsuch from getting on. Now, that doesn't mean you have to change the rules. Each side didn't get their nominee. Let's sit down and come together. Our Republican friends are acting like, you know, they're a cat on the top of a tree, and they have to jump off with all the damage that entails. Come back off the tree, sit down, and work with us, and we will produce a mainstream nominee.
Senator Schumer, why should...
One more point, Chuck. It'll be a Republican nominee, but remember, Democrats voted for Roberts and Alito, and both of them got the 60 votes.
All right, but there are already 2 Democrats for Neil Gorsuch, so there already is a bipartisan majority that support him. And look, 2 is 2. It's more than 0 for what it's worth. But why should Senator McConnell work with you guys on this when you changed the rules first, when you decided to do this? And again, a change that you yourself said this week and 2 months ago that you regret and it was a mistake.
But I don't regret not changing it for the Supreme Court. And let me read you a quote of Mr. McConnell. You like to put up quotes. He said, I think we can stipulate, and my good friends on the other side of the aisle stipulated from time to time over the years when they were in the minority that in the Senate it takes 60 votes on controversial matters. That has been the tradition of the Senate for a long time. This is nothing new.
Then why did you change the rules in the first place? I go back to this because now we're going down this slippery slope, and everybody has hypocrisy on their side to point the finger. But you guys are hand in hand sliding down this slope. Tell me this, in 10 years, do you think the filibuster will still be alive for anything?
That's one of the few things that my dear friend Mitch said on the show that I agree with. I don't think there's any thirst to change the legislative rules, 60 votes for that. Most Democrats and most Republicans have served in both the minority and majority and know what it means. But why not? You know, you can do a lot of finger pointing. Each side has some right here. Let's stop this now. And the way to stop it is the way I mentioned. You know, other presidents have consulted the other side. President Clinton wanted Bruce Babbitt. He called Orrin Hatch. Orrin Hatch said, no, why don't you pick Breyer or Ginsburg? And he did. President Obama called people about Merrick Garland. All Donald Trump consulted was this hard-right special interest group, the Federalist Society. And let me just, the New York Times and the Washington Post, when they looked at Gorsuch's record, one said he'd be the second most conservative justice on the court, only short of Thomas. And the other, the Post, said he'd be the most conservative. This is not a mainstream choice. He's way far over.
And Senator, what makes you think?
So at least one thing I agree with on Chuck Schumer, what Chuck Schumer said there is that, you know, no one has clean hands. You know, both sides have done their share of being partisan and not being fair, but I still think the Democrats have a stronger argument, but I do think that both Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell were engaging in some amount of spin in, you know, the Chuck Schumer line about a 60-vote standard. Well, there's, you know, Clarence Thomas only got 53 votes. You saw that come up. And then the whole idea about the filibuster being, you know, unprecedented. Well, there's the whole Abe Fortas thing, and they say, well, that wasn't a partisan filibuster. Abe Fortas was a nominee back, I think it was LBJ in the 60s, I think. And then he eventually had to leave the Supreme Court because he had ethics problems. But that was like a little under 6 minutes of Chuck Schumer versus a little under 6 minutes of Mitch McConnell. And I think they were both about equally effective as politicians giving their spin. But as I said before I showed those clips, I thought that the most effective presentation I saw on this came from Maine's independent senator Angus King, who not only linked the whole filibuster and Merrick Garland sides, but then gave the rationale that I really believe as to why there should be 60 votes, why there should be the possibility of a filibuster on Supreme Court nominees. And I will discuss that after we watch the Angus King clip, a little over 90 seconds, from CBS's Face the Nation, responding to a question from John Dickerson this morning here.
And just quickly on the matter of the filibuster, where are you? Do you have a philosophical view about whether Senate Democrats should filibuster a Supreme Court nominee?
Well, you know, I heard what John Cornyn, my friend John Cornyn, just said. Last year, Merrick Garland was subjected to what I would call the granddaddy of all filibusters, not even allowed to have a hearing, much less a vote, went on for something like 11 months. And so, you know, there's plenty of, you can argue this in both directions. I think I've had to take something like 400 cloture votes since I've been in the Senate for the past 4.5 years, and they've been on all manner of big and small things. So the idea of a 60-vote requirement for a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court doesn't strike me as out of line with Senate tradition.
Heidi Heitkamp said 2 wrongs don't make a right, though. Democrat who is supporting Neil Gorsuch and is not supporting the filibuster. So why do 2 wrongs make a right if filibuster's okay in this case because Republicans didn't?
I'm not suggesting that 2 wrongs do make a right. What I'm suggesting is that I think the 60-vote margin requires some level of bipartisanship, and whether it's on legislation or on a major appointment like this, that isn't bad for the country, that you have to have people and ideas that have some level of buy-in from both parties. So, as I say, I haven't made my final decision on this, and I will later in the week.
Let me ask you about intelligence. Do you think...
So I thought there were 2 great arguments from Senator Angus King there. First, the argument where he tied together the filibuster with the Merrick Garland nomination, where he called the obstruction of Merrick Garland the granddaddy of all filibusters, the 11-month filibuster, and I don't know why Chuck Schumer didn't think to say that. And then his reasoning for why there should still be the possibility of a filibuster, why there should be a supermajority for Supreme Court nominees, that, you know, there should be some bipartisanship for this lifetime appointment. And I'd go even farther and say that one of the purposes of the Supreme Court is to be a check on the political branches, to be a check on the tyranny of the majority. So there should be a supermajority to appoint people to the Supreme Court and even other federal judgeships. I actually believe this. I am fairly free of hypocrisy on this issue. If you've been following my opinions over the last 10 years I've been on YouTube, I've had this belief for quite a while that even when Democrats were appointing judges, that judges should get this supermajority vote because they protect the rights of minorities. And by minorities, I don't just mean ethnic and racial minorities, but political minorities and unpopular groups of people and unpopular individuals who the political branches might never want to protect. That's the kind of people who Supreme Court justices have to be willing to protect. And so they should have some bipartisanship in the way they're selected. That's my belief. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. So that's the last clip on the Supreme Court issue. I wanted to show a couple quick clips on the immigration issue. This one of the things that's happened in the last week or so was that Jeff Sessions came out against sanctuary cities. I think that was last Monday. He said that they were going to start taking money away from sanctuary cities. And I want to show a few clips on that. First, a joke about how Donald Trump's immigration policy has hit a snag based on how stupid all of well, not all, but so many of Donald Trump's policy pronouncements had no thinking that went into them. And of course, one of them was one of his biggest promises of all, you know, the build a wall, get Mexico to pay for it. And like both parts of that have real problems. And this is Bill Maher making fun of Donald Trump's promise, kind of like his healthcare promise, as he says at the beginning of this joke over here.
Here's my favorite story of the week. You know, remember when Trump said about healthcare, nobody knew. Nobody knew it was okay. Okay, apparently this is a theme now. It also applies to the wall that they're going to build along the Mexican border. Nobody knew. They identified just now a new problem, tiny problem. They just found out that 889 miles of the border is the Rio Grande River, which we share with Mexico. And if we build the wall on our side, we're giving them the whole river. Oops. And yet, his approval rating is still 35%. I don't know who these 35% are, but can we build a wall around them? All right.
build a wall around the anti-immigrant people. I guess that's kind of funny, but I wanted to get to some of the more serious parts of the immigration issue and the whole sanctuary city, sanctuary state issue Bill Maher had on an immigrants' rights activist, a Pulitzer Prize-winning undocumented immigrant here. He's actually, I believe, born in the Philippines. His name is Jose Antonio Vargas, and he talks about sanctuary cities, and he also talks about something I've been trying to fight for here in California, the California Values Act, Senate Bill 54, which I actually lobbied one of my members of the state legislature on, and I'll talk about that a little more, and also this big immigration forum that was held here in Sacramento with the acting director of ICE, and I have a clip of the protests that I took myself that I will show after you see this discussion between Bill Maher and Jose Antonio Vargas over here.
What about the fact that Jeff Sessions is going after sanctuary cities? This is a sanctuary state, pretty much. And first of all, tell us what that means, sanctuary.
Well, actually, I think we have so politicized this issue that I think it's really important that we define our terms, right?
Yes.
So it is safer, right, for all of us, documented, undocumented U.S. citizens, if undocumented people who live here can feel comfortable reporting, talking to the cops, right? Saying, hey, something's happening, something. Right now in LA, the LAPD reported that 25% decrease in reporting of rapes in the Latino community because there's fear that once you report somebody, ICE might come get you, right? And for me too, like, the bigger issue here, and you know, Jeff Sessions, the former governor of Alabama, who believes in
Senator.
Oh, the former senator of Alabama, who believes in states' rights when he was governor. I mean, when he was senator of Alabama. The fact this overreach, telling the federal government, for the federal government to tell the states how they can protect their residents, is hypocritical at worst. But to me, I actually think it's really important. You mentioned this. Right now, there's going to be a bill in front of Governor Jerry Brown's desk asking him to sign the California Values Act that would declare California a sanctuary state. I think, given that this state is home to a fourth of the country's undocumented population, in this state, nearly half of all children have at least one immigrant parent, right? Hopefully Jerry Brown signs that into law.
So,
now, one thing I disagree with Jose Antonio Vargas there is California actually is already a sanctuary state. SB 54, which I support, just takes it farther. There, we already passed something called the Trust Act and the Truth Act, and SB 54 just cuts off even more communication between local law enforcement and immigration authorities. And I think that Jose Antonio Vargas made the really important argument there at the beginning about how it actually increases public safety when undocumented immigrants in our community, and there are 2.5 million in California, that they need to be able to talk to local law enforcement when they're the victims of crime and the witness of crime. And so that's why it's so important for sanctuary city, sanctuary state policies to be implemented. And I want to show you a quick 30-second video. I went to an immigration forum here in Sacramento with the acting director of ICE and my local sheriff, where they were trying to justify their deportation policies, and the activists here in Sacramento were not. We decided that, we don't want your racist hate, as you can see in this 30-second clip that I took myself over here.
California is an immigrant state. We don't want your racist hate. California is an immigrant state. We don't want your racist hate. California is an immigrant state. We don't want your racist hate. California is an immigrant state. We don't want your racist hate. California is an immigrant state. We don't want your racist hate. California is an immigrant state. We don't want your racist hate. California is an immigrant state. We don't want your racist hate. The council members.
So you can see there, California is an immigrant state, and we don't want Trump's racist hate. And, well, I was there taking video. I'm not that great a chanter. It kind of creeps me out to be in like a mob. Sometimes I chant, but what I thought was really great about that, an actual viral video came out of that meeting. It's posted on my Facebook page. I put a link down to it in the video description. It's this Holocaust survivor who confronted the director of ICE about Trump deportations and also my local sheriff. And it kind of went viral. You can see it's got over 120,000 views just in that incarnation. And I put a link down in the video description to my where I posted on my LiberalViewer Facebook page, and you can give a thumbs up to my page when you're there. And by the way, give a thumbs up to this video. I appreciate my super chat supporters, or if you want to become one of the monthly supporters of my channel, there's a link down in the video description to my Patreon page. I hope you appreciate all the clips I picked out, all the work I did putting it all together for you this week and every week. The ACLU work I've been doing, I even went to a conference for part of the day today. That's why I was delayed. It makes it very difficult for me to make edited, produced videos. It's like the ACLU membership has tripled since the election, and my volunteer work has also kind of tripled. So I can't make any promises on that, but thanks for joining me. I will at least be back next week with another edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. And until then, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.